The Hollywood of the 80s and 90s, an era painted with the explosive vibrancy of popular culture, was a dazzling stage where stars shone brightly in the artistic firmament. It was a time of timeless melodies that seeped into every corner of the soul, of classic films that defined a generation, and of cinematic icons whose beauty transcended time itself. The blinding stage lights, the roaring applause, and the fervent admiration of millions of fans seemed to be the ultimate goal, a glittering prize that everyone craved. But behind that magnificent velvet curtain and the glamorous facade, a shadowy, enigmatic darkness lurked, chilling tales of addiction, of fierce, silent battles that only those within the inner circle truly understood, recognizing its pain and its devastating toll. It was a grim underside, a hidden scar beneath layers of perfect makeup. A quiet tragedy that only a brave few dared to confront. Why did these female artists, admired by the entire world, sought after by top directors, lauded by critics, and idolized by millions of fans, find themselves ensnared in the ruthless spiral of alcoholism, drug abuse, and stimulants? What compelled these talented, beautiful, and powerful women to drive themselves into the abyss of self-destruction? What tremendous pressures did they face? What invisible burdens from a relentlessly demanding entertainment industry? What internal voids from childhood or broken relationships that twisted their lives into such chaotic and turbulent sagas? Was it possible that the very glamour, wealth, and power they possessed became a double-edged sword, thrusting them into a world where reality was distorted and joy was merely fleeting? Demi Moore, a symbol of 90s alluring talent with groundbreaking roles in Ghost and Indecent Proposal. Melanie Griffith, an actress with a fiery beauty and talent affirmed through Working Girl. Courtney Love, the fiercely individualistic and rebellious queen of grunge, inextricably linked to the legend of Kurt Cobain. Lindsay Lohan, the promising young star of the 2000s, who transitioned from a teen idol to the epicenter of countless scandals. And finally, Elizabeth Taylor, the classic Hollywood cinematic legend, who weathered more career and personal storms than almost anyone else. 5 icons of charisma, talent, and influence. What dark secret did they all share? Was it a silent illness, a hidden curse, or a systemic flaw that pushed them into such circumstances? What scandals made them the relentless subject of public discussion, and could they ever escape that grim shadow to reclaim themselves? Or did they forever sink into the endless spiral? In this thrilling and melancholic investigative journey, we will delve deep into the lives of each woman, from the dazzling glare of the stage and silver screen to those moments seemingly on the brink of collapse, where they wrestled with their addictions, where hope was merely a flickering, fragile light in the deepening gloom. In these narratives, addiction isn't just a formidable enemy, it's a powerful, central character in their real-life dramas. A silent yet ruthless manipulator, always poised to devour their very souls. Each battle fought, each stumble, each desperate attempt to rise again will be revealed with unflinching honesty, unembellished and unhidden. The questions that seem to defy answers regarding the underlying causes of their downfall will slowly be unveiled, layer by layer, as the veil of mystery is lifted. Shocking truths about industry pressures, about toxic relationships, about the profound loneliness at the pinnacle of fame, and about neglected psychological wounds will be laid bare. And, most importantly, invaluable lessons about human nature, about the inherent frailty of the self, about the extraordinary resilience required to overcome darkness, and about the hope for recovery will be vividly portrayed, offering a multifaceted and deeper insight into these seemingly perfect lives. We won't just examine their failures. We'll also witness moments of immense strength, of desperate attempts to be reborn from the ashes. How did some manage to break free from this ruthless cycle, while others sank deeper? What role did family, friends, rehabilitation programs, and especially individual willpower play in shaping their destinies? These stories are not just tragic vignettes. They are also quiet anthems of the human spirit's perseverance when confronted with its greatest adversities. They are chronicles of the spirit's fight against the relentless tide. A testament to the enduring flicker of hope even in the bleakest of nights. Are you ready to step into a world rich with true, often tragic, yet vibrantly resilient stories of 5 of Hollywood's most celebrated female artists? Join me as we uncover the secrets behind the stage lights and their silent, relentless battles against addiction. Together, we will decipher the hidden messages, understand the unspoken pains, and draw invaluable lessons from the turbulent journeys of these extraordinary women. This is not merely a trip into the past, it is an exploration of the limits of human endurance, the power of recovery, and the true meaning of glamour. Let's pull back the mysterious curtain and gaze upon the stark, unvarnished truth. Demi Moore, glamour and the shadow of addiction. She was once the box office queen. But behind those sharp eyes and that perfect physique was a soul in freefall. A dark secret that couldn't be hidden. The perfect face of tragedy. If anyone ever dared to challenge the very definition of fame, of soft power and ageless beauty in 1990s Hollywood, it was undeniably Demi Moore. With eyes that sparkled like daggers, full, sensual lips hinting at deep mysteries, and a demeanor as cool as the Mojave Desert wind. Demi wasn't merely a film star, she was an icon, a monument to allure and feminine strength on screen. Her portrayal of Molly Jensen in the fantastical romance film Ghost, 1990, transformed her into a $1 million woman, a box office phenomenon and a name on everyone's lips. From there, a string of successful roles followed, culminating in Striptease, 1996, where she became the highest-paid actress in Hollywood at the time, commanding a record $12.5 million. Every major magazine clamored for her on their cover, every producer wanted her in their project. She was the embodiment of the American dream, rising from nothing to the pinnacle of stardom. But, as every noir story often narrates, the brighter the light, the deeper the shadows. Few knew that, behind the flawless magazine covers, the captivating and sharply cool performances, lay a child who grew up beside an addicted mother and never-ending nightmares. It was a past that couldn't be erased, a wound seared deep into her soul. Unable to be filled by anything but the distorted emotions offered by stimulants. Demi Jean Gwines, her birth name, came into the world in 1962, into a far from peaceful family, or rather, an undefinable mess. Her biological father, Charles Harmon, had abandoned them before she was born, leaving a permanent void in the young girl's heart. Her second stepfather, Danny Gwines, though seemingly kinder, was also a heavy alcoholic who committed suicide when Demi was 12. Her mother, Virginia King, was not the kind of woman who could maintain a peaceful home or provide stability for her children. She was engulfed in alcohol, cigarettes, and a long succession of different men, leaving Demi adrift amidst constant arguments, relentless moves, and continuous emotional breakdowns. Demi's childhood was a relentless cycle of moving from one dingy motel to another, from one city to another, with no true place to call home. She witnessed her mother's arrest for drunk driving, and at the tender age of 15, she was forced to confront a horrifying scene, watching her mother attempt suicide right before her eyes. That fear and sense of helplessness etched themselves deep into Demi's subconscious, becoming a psychological scar that would never fully heal. It's often said, Hollywood is where wounds are masked by blinding stage lights, by multi-million-dollar contracts, by public adulation. But the cruel truth is, sometimes, that very light only makes the shadows of internal trauma deeper, sharper, ultimately engulfing even the strongest of souls. Demi Moore stands as a stark example of this tragedy. From sex symbol to spiraling icon, stepping into the entertainment industry like a hardened street kid, without a hint of fear or hesitation. Demi Moore quickly forged her own distinct mark, sharp, independent, and never conforming to the mold. She wasn't your typical Hollywood princess. She was part of the Brat Pack, a notorious group of rebellious, party-loving young actors of the 80s, who defined a new generation of stars with their free-spirited, unapologetic lifestyles. The film St. Elmo's Fire, 1985, helped make her a familiar name, but it was the resounding success of Ghost in 1990 that truly catapulted her to A-list status. A string of impressive roles followed, including A Few Good Men, 1992, alongside Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, in Decent Proposal, 1993, a controversial yet highly successful film, and the financial apex was Striptease, 1996, where she became the highest-paid actress of the time, commanding a staggering $12.5 million. She was an empire, a brand, an icon of powerful and independent femininity. But that overly dazzling light of fame, money, and incessant attention had blinded her, robbing her of the ability to discern the fragile line between reality and illusion. Behind the glamorous sets. After every interview or red carpet event, Demi began to slide deep into all-night parties, into what seemed like bottomless glasses of straight vodka, and tiny white pills that could erase months of anxiety, fear, and painful childhood memories. She masked her profound loneliness with empty fame, using her work as a mental morphine dose, a way to delude herself that everything was fine until she could no longer distinguish between acting on screen and the raw, unvarnished reality of her own life. Bruce Willis, her then husband, the famous action star, repeatedly tried to pull Demi back from the brink, striving to save her from Hollywood's deadly traps. But their tumultuous marriage, one of the most prominent relationships in Hollywood at the time, could not escape the harsh destiny of the entertainment world, glamorous on the outside, shattered within. Willis's efforts, however sincere, weren't enough to conquer the demons Demi was wrestling with alone. Their relationship dissolved in 2000, marking a significant shock for Demi, pushing her deeper into a spiral of loss and pain. She felt she had lost not just a life partner, but also a part of her own self-definition within that glittering world. The addiction matrix and the fall in the spotlight. The vortex of addiction, like a patient predator, awaited its opportune moment to deliver a fatal blow. On one fateful night in 2012, when the glamour had somewhat faded and the cracks began to show, Demi Moore collapsed in her own Los Angeles mansion, a luxurious home that concealed too much darkness. The cause? After inhaling excessive nitrous oxide, she proceeded to use a cocktail of other stimulants, pushing her body and mind to their absolute limits. Police, paramedics, and the media all swarmed the once beloved Hollywood star. Images of her lying unconscious on a stretcher flooded newspapers and every media outlet. Gone was the regal pride of a film queen. Gone was the deadly allure, replaced only by a woman frantic with a loss of control, a pathetic shadow of her former self. It wasn't her first encounter with addiction, but it was the one that led to her unmasking in the most public, rawest way imaginable before the entire world. It was the moment her perfect facade shattered, revealing a brutal truth. This scandal became a painful turning point, yet also a necessary jolt for her to confront the grim reality of her condition. In her memoir, Inside Out, published in 2019, Demi courageously confessed everything, holding nothing back: long months of heavy alcoholism, Vicodin addiction, an addictive painkiller, cocaine abuse, and amphetamine dependency. She recounted nights spent hiding in the bathroom, alone and desperate, snorting drugs to quell her insecurities, to temporarily forget the invisible fears tormenting her. She spoke of miscarriages, personal tragedies whose root cause was a body ravaged by stimulants. And she revealed the moment Ashton Kutcher, her husband 15 years her junior. A relationship that had seemed to promise peace left her when he could no longer bear a wife submerged in alcohol and hallucinations, a person he no longer recognized. This breakdown. Following her divorce from Bruce Willis, plunged Demi even deeper into despair and feelings of abandonment. There's a passage in the memoir that sends shivers down the reader's spine. A profoundly painful confession from a wounded soul. I lived without feeling worthy of living. That wasn't just despair, it was a complete surrender of herself. A sense of meaninglessness and no escape. This was the confession of a woman who had touched the depths of suffering and realized that glory or money could never buy peace of mind. Hollywood and the price paid. No one in Hollywood can hold on to their star status forever. This is especially true for women, who constantly face immense pressure regarding appearance and age. When beauty was no longer the ultimate weapon, when scandals began to overshadow talent and career, and when mental health hit rock bottom, Demi Moore was cast out of the very empire she had built with sweat, tears, and even blood. Hollywood, a colossal grinding machine, had rejected her. The movie offers stopped. Audition calls gradually dwindled, then vanished altogether. Fashion houses, once eager for her to wear their designs, turned their backs, seeking new, younger faces, unburdened by notoriety. The media, which once hailed her as a queen, now only referred to her as a fading star on the decline, a prime example of an icon's freefall. An addiction, like a toxic lover, a persistent ghost, returned every time she felt weak, every time she felt lonely or desperate, binding her in invisible chains. She attempted every recovery therapy, from meditation and detox programs to high-end rehab centers in Utah with exorbitant costs, but as she herself admitted in her memoir, "I was never afraid to die. I was only afraid to live like this." That statement encapsulates the utter despair of a woman trapped within her own body and mind. She experienced multiple relapses, multiple stumbles, each one a fresh stab at her soul. Hollywood didn't just take her career, it took her dignity, her privacy, and almost her entire life. The price paid for such immense glamour was internal decay. A wound that couldn't heal without extraordinary courage and effort for self-recovery. Phoenix from the ashes. Surprisingly, it was Demi Moore herself, the woman once deemed ruined, past her prime. A tragic tale of downfall, who rose powerfully, reinventing herself and living her most authentic life in her 50s. After years of relentless struggle with addiction, after countless stumbles and failures, she finally found sobriety, discovering light in the dark tunnel of her life. No longer needing to play the role of a flawless, perfect woman. No longer striving to appear strong and invulnerable, Demi confessed for the first time with sincere vulnerability, "I am vulnerable, and that doesn't make me less." It was a powerful declaration. A raw and honest acceptance of herself. She returned to acting, not in dazzling leading roles, but in supporting parts rich with depth and humanity. Showcasing the maturity and experience of a soul that had weathered many storms. She wrote books. Her memoir, Inside Out, became a phenomenon, a sincere, powerful confession that inspired millions. She launched podcasts, using her own story to help others. She collaborated with mental health and addiction organizations, becoming a crucial voice in the fight against stigma for those battling the disease. And most importantly, she reunited with her daughters, the children who had left her out of fear their mother would die right before their eyes. For the first time, they sat down to dinner together without alcohol, without tears, only with peace and genuine love. In a world of tragic falls and miraculous forgiveness, Demi Moore stands as a vivid testament that even when the world deems one a failure, even when everything seems to have crumbled, there's still a chance to start anew, from the very place of brokenness, from the deepest wounds. Demi Moore's story is not just a tragedy of addiction. It's also an epic of resilience, of the courage to face the truth, and of the ability to be reborn from the ashes to become a stronger, more authentic person than ever before. She is a phoenix who rose from the very flames of tragedy to find true peace and purpose in her life. Melanie Griffith, the seductive lady amidst drug-induced haze. That smile, those eyes, once brought countless souls to their knees, collapsing at her feet. But deep inside Melanie, hidden beneath the seductive veneer, was a dark vortex she couldn't control, a mystery of self-destruction. Growing up where innocence was lost. Hollywood isn't just a destination for rosy dreams. Where magic turns wishes into reality, it's also a cruel wasteland, a colossal machine that devours tender souls, turning them into fragmented pieces under the blinding glare of the spotlight. Melanie Griffith, born in 1957, didn't just grow up in the spotlight, she was born from it. She was the daughter of the celebrated actress Tippi Hedren, the renowned muse of master director Alfred Hitchcock in the classic film The Birds, 1963. From an early age, Melanie lived in a world where there was no clear boundary between truth and falsehood, between the stage and reality. For her, life was a continuous performance, where true emotions were often concealed beneath a glamorous facade. While children her age were still innocently playing with dolls, reading fairy tales, or running freely on grassy fields, Melanie lived in the thick air of film sets, amidst the lavish parties of Hollywood's elite, surrounded by the half-tipsy laughter and murky whispers of adults. She was exposed to alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs from too young an age, as naturally as breathing. She entered professional acting at 9 years old, not to try her hand, but to simply exist. By 14, she had been sent to a distant boarding school, an attempt by her mother to keep her away from Hollywood's pitfalls, but it seemed too late. And then, at 17, Melanie agreed to pose nude for Playboy magazine, a bold yet haunting decision that exposed both her nascent body and soul to the public. Also at 17, she plunged into a tumultuous and fated romance with a man nearly 2 decades her senior, actor Don Johnson. Their love affair, marked by 2 marriages and 2 divorces, was one of Hollywood's most scandalous and heavily chronicled romances. It was shrouded in the glow of the spotlight, celebrated as a golden couple, but it was wrapped in alcohol, cigarettes, and cocaine. Their relationship, full of passion yet equally destructive, mirrored the very chaos within Melanie's soul. She learned to love and live in an environment where stimulants were an indispensable part, the catalyst for every emotion, every celebration, and every outburst of anger. Melanie never truly had a childhood, only a lifelong performance, roles she could never truly shed, even when the lights went down and the audience departed. It was a deeply etched wound, an invisible curse that clung to her for decades. The woman of illusion and pain. The film Working Girl, 1988, propelled Melanie Griffith to the pinnacle of her career, transforming her from a promising actress into an A-list star, critically acclaimed. Her portrayal of Tess McGill, an intelligent, ambitious office worker who overcame gender and class prejudice to assert herself in the ruthless world of Wall Street, was beloved across America. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress, appeared on every prestigious magazine cover, and suddenly became a seductive intellect, a rare and coveted title at the time, when beauty often implied a lack of depth. This success seemingly promised her peace and confidence, but it was merely a glamorous facade covering a structure slowly decaying from within. As Tess McGill achieved resounding success on screen, the real-life Melanie began to lose control dramatically. The pressure of fame, the demand for constant perfection, and a persistent fear of failure pushed her deeper into the vortex of addiction. She often appeared unsteady, her eyes vacant, unable to remember lines even for simple scenes, forgetting crucial appointments with producers or directors. Her packed work schedule became an excuse to indulge in the embrace of stimulants. Vodka became her familiar breakfast, the thing that helped her wake up to face another high-pressure day. Cocaine was her afternoon vitamin, providing a false surge of energy and masking her physical and mental exhaustion. And Valium, tranquilizers, were her nightly companions, helping her find fleeting sleep amidst the hallucinations. Don Johnson, her then husband, to whom she had remarried, was also an inseparable part of their shared addiction. They loved each other like two souls adrift in a boundless ocean, a beautiful, dramatic, yet deadly and destructive relationship. Arguments, property destruction, and piercing screams became all too common. Police were even called to their home after a small party ended in a cacophony of smashing and shouting that disturbed the quiet Beverly Hills neighborhood. But people called it artists' love, a romanticized term for decay, an excuse for a tragedy unfolding right before the public eye. Their relationship was a symphony of chaos, where drugs and alcohol were the terrifying conductors. The scars of rehab. Melanie Griffith once remarked with a bitter, experienced cynicism, in Hollywood, "Going to rehab is like getting your nails done, everyone's tried it at least once." But for her, rehab wasn't a passing fancy, it was 3 official, publicly known times, and countless unofficial attempts, quiet efforts born of desperation. Each time was a new scar, a painful reminder of the relentless battle with herself. Her first time in rehab was in 1988, right after the triumphant success of Working Girl. The sudden pressure of fame, combined with a demanding work schedule and ingrained addictive habits, left her unable to complete filming due to tremors, psychosis, and a loss of control. She was forced into a treatment center to restore her image and health. It was a temporary solution, a ceasefire in a prolonged war. Her second time was in 2000, after her separation from her third husband, the handsome actor Antonio Banderas. This long-lasting and seemingly perfect marriage, with its image of a dream couple, couldn't save her from the sleepless nights in the bathroom with a bottle of liquor and a blister pack of tranquilizers. Banderas tried to help. He stayed by her side, but ultimately couldn't bear the weight of her persistent addiction. This rehab stint was a desperate attempt to salvage herself and a fractured relationship. Her most recent time was in 2009, after a quiet relapse into alcoholism, when she thought she had everything under control. This time, she voluntarily entered the center. Not because of a scandal or external pressure, but because she recognized she was once again spiraling into the abyss. In her personal diary, which was leaked, there was a line that sent shivers down Hollywood's spine, a terrifyingly honest and chilling confession: "I didn't drink to forget. I drank to feel like I existed." This was more than just a confession of addiction, it was a cry for help from a lost soul, feeling her life was meaningless without stimulants. It exposed the profound emptiness within a woman who outwardly seemed to have everything. The devastating toll of an icon. Melanie Griffith had it all: blinding fame, immeasurable wealth, captivating beauty, and the love of the most famous and powerful men of her era. She was an icon of sensuality and success. But she also lost more than anyone could imagine. Losses that couldn't be measured by money or renown. Her career began to stagnate after the 90s, as major roles no longer came her way. The brutal film industry constantly seeks new faces, and the blemishes from her addiction scandals made producers hesitant. Her once millions charming beautiful face gradually became stiff and distorted from plastic surgery, partly due to an obsession with aging, partly an attempt to mask the ravages left by addiction on her skin and spirit. Directors who once cast her as leading ladies now only dare to offer her minor supporting roles, playing mothers or women with a past, a polite way to refer to a star's decline. Her children, especially Dakota Johnson, star of 50 Shades of Grey and Melanie's daughter with Don Johnson, spoke to the press about growing up in a house full of alcohol and prolonged silence. Though Melanie always loved her children dearly, she couldn't be a peaceful haven, a solid anchor for them when she herself was a chaotic battlefield, where the demons of addiction still raged. Dakota's confessions weren't reproaches, but honest reflections of a childhood heavily impacted by her mother's illness. Melanie sacrificed her career, her beauty, and even a part of her relationships with her children in her battle with drugs and alcohol. That was the cruel price of an icon besieged by darkness. Unlike many artists who were swallowed whole by the black hole of addiction without finding a way out, Melanie Griffith managed to pull herself free, not with applause or prestigious awards, but with silence, patience, and extraordinary courage. In her 60s, she no longer stars in blockbusters, no longer attends noisy events or parties through the night, but she has become one of the most powerful and sincere voices in Hollywood's anti-addiction campaigns. She actively participates in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and NA, Narcotics Anonymous, groups, sharing her story to help others struggling with similar diseases. She sponsors rehab centers for female artists, using her own experience to make a difference. And notably, she openly shares the scars of her life, her painful past and her many stumbles, as a valuable lesson and a warning for future generations. She doesn't hide the raw truth of her struggle. On one occasion, a reporter asked her, with obvious curiosity, "Are you afraid people will only remember you as a star who was once addicted?" Melanie smiled, her smile no longer carrying the sharp edge of the past, but instead a peaceful and genuine warmth. Without a hint of hesitation, "If that helps someone else stop drinking, stop using drugs, then I'm proud." Those words were not just self-forgiveness but a new mission, a deeper meaning for her life. Melanie Griffith found purpose in helping others, in transforming her most painful experiences into a source of motivation and hope. She is a living testament that recovery is possible, that even after hitting rock bottom, one can rise and find a meaningful life. Melanie's story is not just a warning about the devastation of addiction, but also a hymn to willpower, to the resilience of the human spirit when facing darkness and finding the light of redemption. Courtney Love, screaming amidst the demons. She was never a victim. She was the scream in the night, the fire that burned every convention, the gentle curse in the form of a woman, an untamable symbol of chaos, a child born in the ruins. Courtney Love didn't grow up with cozy American breakfasts and goodnight kisses from doting parents. She was the harsh product of a fractured hippie family, a child dragged through radical religious communes, unofficial foster homes, and ultimately abandoned by her own mother, seen as an unwelcome burden. The first piece of her life's puzzle was one of disintegration and instability. Her father, Hank Harrison, once managed the legendary psychedelic band Grateful Dead, an eccentric figure immersed in hallucinogens like LSD. He was a vague shadow, a father who existed only on paper. Her mother, Linda Carroll, a psychologist, left early, leaving Courtney adrift among orphanages, unfamiliar foster families, and shady quasi-religious organizations with bizarre rules. By the age of 16, she had been shuffled through a total of 25 foster homes and various reform schools. Each place was a mental prison, a new test for her will to survive. Her mother's rejection from someone she once deeply loved was a deep, unhealing wound, shaping her rebellious and defiant personality. Courtney wasn't taught to be well-behaved, to conform to societal norms. On the contrary, she was taught that if she wanted to survive, she had to scream loudly, to fight fiercely so as not to be swallowed by the surrounding chaos. She learned to survive on the streets of San Francisco, in dingy slums, in seedy bars. At 16, she was already working as a stripper to make ends meet, a painful experience that nevertheless toughened her. She hitchhiked across the world, from Ireland to Japan, using a fake passport and money earned from fleeting affairs, dangerous encounters. Courtney Love was a child born from ruins, raised in the shadows, and carried scars she never bothered to conceal. It was a tumultuous foundation for a life that would become even more volatile. From grunge launchpad to heroin abyss, Courtney Love was never just Kurt Cobain's wife. That was a label the media slapped on her. But it utterly failed to capture the raw essence and undeniable talent of this woman. Before becoming a female punk icon, an unquenchable voice of a generation, she had already founded the band Hole in 1989, a true grunge storm, blending the melancholy, madness, and ferocity characteristic of the 90s. Hole's music was the scream of damaged souls, an uncontrollable rage. The album Live Through This, 1994, was released just 1 week after Kurt's tragic death, and was immediately hailed as a masterpiece, a rock magnum opus. It affirmed Courtney's talent, proving she could stand on her own 2 feet, without relying on her husband's shadow. But Kurt's shadow always lingered, a grim curse she could never fully escape. Courtney and Kurt met in 1990 at a show in Portland. They fell for each other like two storms heading in the same direction, two damaged souls finding kinship in shared pain and rebellion. They married on February 24, 1992, on Waikiki Beach, Hawaii, when Courtney was already pregnant with Frances Bean Cobain, their destined daughter. The media dubbed them the Sid and Nancy of the 90s, an ominous moniker, referencing the legendary punk couple Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen, whose passionate yet deadly love affair ended in tragedy. Courtney and Kurt's relationship was much the same, dangerously beautiful, dramatic, and unsalvageable. They lived in a world of their own, where creativity went hand in hand with self-destruction. Courtney and Kurt were even caught sharing heroin backstage at a show. They made no secret of their addictive behaviors, even viewing it as part of their rebellious artist lifestyle. But the most horrifying truth was exposed in a shocking 1992 Vanity Fair interview, where Courtney admitted to using heroin during her pregnancy, a statement that sent shockwaves through the public, nearly costing her custody of her daughter Frances Bean right after her birth. Authorities intervened, and her daughter was placed with a temporary family. However, the truth behind that seemingly happy family photo was a string of overdoses, agonizing withdrawals, and relentless emotional abuse. Their lives were a chaotic manifesto on the devastation of drugs. A tragedy publicly performed for the entire world. Kurt's death and the haunting whispers. On April 5, 1994, a fateful day forever etched in rock history, Kurt Cobain was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head at his Seattle home. Seattle police quickly confirmed it was a suicide. But Courtney? Courtney never fully believed that story, and no one fully believed she was blameless. The media, fans, and even some close associates regarded her with suspicion. Several investigative journalists, particularly Tom Grant, a famous private detective hired by Courtney herself when Kurt briefly went missing before his death, publicly voiced suspicions that Kurt's death was staged. In a series of shocking interviews and released personal investigation documents, Tom Grant argued that the amount of heroin in Kurt's system was enough to render anyone unconscious, making it impossible for him to have held a gun and shot himself. He claimed Courtney prevented him from accessing crucial information, attempting to conceal suspicious details, and stated that she acted like someone hiding something horrible. These accusations, though never proven in court, ignited an endless wave of controversy, deepening the mystery surrounding the grunge legend's death. In that chaotic and grief-stricken context, Courtney Love neither denied nor vehemently refuted the accusations. She chose to confront the pain and suspicion with her own rebellious instinct. She sobbed uncontrollably at the funeral, read poignant love letters to Kurt at performances, and repeatedly took to the stage to scream with all her anger and anguish, "You may be dead, but I'm going to live. I'm going to make the world remember both of us." That wasn't just a vow. It was a declaration of war against fate, against death, and against the haunting whispers. Courtney transformed her pain into energy, her anger into motivation to survive, not to be swallowed by her husband's shadow. She continued to write music, perform, and strive to maintain her career, despite the thorny path ahead. The demon in the bottle and the pill. After Kurt's death, Courtney Love plunged into the abyss of self-destruction. If before she had someone to share the burden of addiction with, now she faced it all alone. Paparazzi footage showed her appearing with dark, sunken eyes, disheveled hair, often screaming senselessly in public, completely out of control. She was once arrested at an airport for smashing property and verbally abusing security personnel. Another time, she threatened an ex-lover with a knife and then self-harmed immediately after. A horrifying scene that showed the extreme mental breakdown. Heroin, OxyContin, Ritalin, sleeping pills, tranquilizers all became a dangerous cocktail Courtney mixed and consumed daily. She lived in a perpetual haze, unable to distinguish between day and night, reality and illusion. In 2003, she was arrested for illegal drug possession. In 2004, she entered rehab. In 2005, she relapsed again. Every time it seemed Courtney had hit rock bottom, she would dig another layer deeper into hell, leaving those around her utterly stunned. She became a terrifying example of addiction's devastation on a brilliant talent. The strange thing is, despite being relentlessly battered by the media, despite record labels cutting ties, despite losing custody of her daughter Frances Bean for a long period due to being deemed unfit to care for her, Courtney still survived. She didn't die. Didn't vanish like many other addicted stars. She was like a phoenix blazing amidst the very ashes she created, an inexplicable rebirth, a dark miracle. Though physically ravaged, her rebellious spirit was never fully extinguished. Perhaps it was her anger, her pain, and her will to not be forgotten that kept her tethered to this world. Resurrection or just another performance? In the early 2010s, after years steeped in addiction, Courtney declared herself clean, no more heroin, no more alcohol, no more tranquilizers. It was a surprising declaration, yet also met with skepticism from the public and critics, who were all too familiar with her fleeting recoveries. However, this time seemed different. She appeared on red carpets with a proud demeanor, her eyes sharp but more sober. She landed an impressive role in the hit TV series Sons of Anarchy, released new singles, wrote a memoir, Dirty Blonde, The Diaries of Courtney Love, full of shocking details, and appeared on talk shows as a symbol of rising from the ruins, a reminder that she was still here, still alive. She spoke about her recovery journey, the challenges, and learning to live without substances. She attended therapy sessions, sought peace in yoga and meditation. She worked to mend her relationship with her daughter. It seemed she had finally found a way out, a sense of calm after decades of struggle. But everyone knows Courtney is never truly safe, never entirely stable. Today she might sing about hope, about rebirth, but tomorrow she might livestream herself cursing colleagues, posting incomprehensible statuses on social media, and threatening to sue the whole world for vague reasons. Her rebellious, defiant personality and the chaos in her soul always persist, like a smoldering fire difficult to extinguish. Frances Bean Cobain, Courtney and Kurt's daughter, who suffered so much from her parents' lives, once said in a rare interview, a quote that encapsulates her mother's complexity. "My mother is a blooming flower in a graveyard." This statement wasn't a reproach, but a profound understanding. An acknowledgement that despite the horrors her mother endured and the shocking behaviors she displayed, she always remained brilliant, always survived, always a miracle amidst the devastation. The final question still lingers in the air. Courtney Love, is she a victim of a fiery era and a tragic past, or is she the demon who chose fire to consume herself, only to rise from the ashes more fiercely, more terrifyingly? Or is she both, a complex blend of tragedy and willpower, of self-destruction and endless rebirth? That's a mystery perhaps only she can answer, if she chooses to. Lindsay Lohan, the lost angel in the Hollywood machine. She didn't need drugs, because Hollywood itself was a more dangerous narcotic than any substance, a blinding opioid that devoured souls. This poignant observation encapsulates the tragic narrative of Lindsay Lohan, a child star whose meteoric rise to fame was matched only by her precipitous fall. Her story is not merely one of personal struggles but a stark indictment of a relentless industry that consumes its young, leaving behind a trail of shattered dreams and unfulfilled potential. A star born from the flashbulbs. Lindsay Lohan's life began not in the quiet normalcy of childhood but under the incessant glare of flashbulbs. At the tender age of 3, the vibrant redhead with a captivating gaze and mischievous eyes made her television debut, gracing commercials for an array of products. From playful toys to delectable cookies and essential household goods. By the age of 8, her face was a familiar sight, having appeared in a staggering 60 different advertisements. She was a precocious, almost unnatural, money-making machine, an early indicator of the immense pressure that would come to define her existence. The true turning point arrived when she was a mere 11 years old. Her dual role in Disney's immensely successful film, The Parent Trap, 1998, catapulted her into global superstardom. Overnight, Lindsay Lohan became a household name, hailed as America's sweetheart, an embodiment of innocence, undeniable charm, and raw, innate talent. This role solidified her image as the quintessential child star, setting the stage for a future seemingly paved with gold. From that moment forward, Lindsay was perceived as the epitome of the ideal teenage girl. She was radiantly beautiful, sharp-witted, remarkably gifted in both acting and singing, and brimming with an almost boundless promise. Industry insiders and the public alike envisioned her as the Julia Roberts of a new generation, destined for a long and illustrious career as a talented and enduring film star. Every flashbulb's pop, every thunderous roar of applause, every lucrative contract offered was directed squarely at her. Yet, the very spotlight that Hollywood shone so brightly upon Lindsay, intended to illuminate her brilliant future, paradoxically began to burn it from within. Silently, relentlessly, this intense scrutiny transformed her into a victim of her own burgeoning fame. A testament to the destructive power of unchecked celebrity. The price of a stolen youth. Lindsay Lohan's teenage years were a stark deviation from the conventional experiences of adolescence. There were no leisurely school grounds, no eagerly anticipated proms, no participation in extracurricular activities, and certainly no innocent first loves. Instead, her formative years unfolded on demanding film sets, amidst grueling schedules that stretched her physical and emotional limits. Her life was meticulously managed by her mother, Dina Lohan, who had transitioned into the role of her manager. Dina was notoriously criticized for her relentless pursuit of financial gain, often accused of treating her daughter as a mere money-making machine, a perpetual cash cow. She constantly pushed Lindsay into new projects, seemingly without regard for her daughter's health or fragile mental state. Adding another layer of profound instability to Lindsay's life was her father, Michael Lohan, whose perpetual entanglements with the law cast a long, dark shadow. His arrests for domestic violence, drunk driving, and financial fraud consistently resurfaced, always appearing just when things seemed to be at their absolute worst, further destabilizing an already tumultuous existence. Lindsay's childhood, if one could even dignify it with such a term, was a chaotic labyrinth. It was characterized by a blind, almost suffocating love from her mother, coupled with excessive expectations from both her family and the industry. She harbored a desperate yearning to escape the gilded cage that was Disney. Trapped between the artificial glamour of Hollywood and the harsh realities of her family tragedy, she was caught between the demanding requirements of the entertainment industry and the glaring absence of a stable, nurturing environment in which to mature naturally. She effortlessly transitioned from starring in critically acclaimed films like Freaky Friday, 2003, to the iconic Mean Girls, 2004, a film that undeniably defined a generation of teens, shaping their style, language, and social dynamics. Yet, she stepped into adulthood without a single moment to learn the fundamental lessons of being an adult: how to take responsibility, how to cope with immense pressure, or how to navigate the complexities of life beyond the silver screen. By the age of 18, Lindsay Lohan had achieved a level of material success that most people only dream of. She owned her own sprawling home in the exclusive Hollywood Hills, drove million-dollar convertibles, and frequently partied late into the night with prominent figures like Paris Hilton and Britney Spears. This notorious trio was famously dubbed the Holy Trinity by the press, more celebrated for their spectacular public downfalls than for their individual careers. The all-night parties, the exclusive luxurious nightclubs, and the readily available stimulants became an indispensable, almost ritualistic, part of her daily life. It was an extravagant yet profoundly hollow lifestyle, a slow, insidious self-destruction cleverly disguised as unbridled fun. Alcohol, cocaine, and the failed escapes. The facade of control began to crack in 2006. Lindsay Lohan was discovered unconscious in a Beverly Hills hotel room after what was discreetly termed an excessive night. She adamantly refused to comment on the incident. But the press and paparazzi, ever vigilant, began scrutinizing her every move, every gesture, with an almost predatory intensity. It was the first undeniable sign that her life was dangerously spiraling out of control. By 2007, the situation escalated dramatically, transforming into a relentless media storm that would follow her for years. In May 2007, Lindsay was arrested for driving under the influence, DUI, after crashing her car into a curb. Just 11 days after being released from jail, in July of the same year, she was arrested yet again. This time, the charges were more severe: driving under the influence of cocaine and possession of a controlled substance. A small bag of cocaine was found in her wallet, futilely hidden in the jeans pocket of a female friend who was accompanying her, a desperate and ultimately failed attempt to conceal the incriminating evidence. Lindsay was only 21 years old then, an age when many of her peers were just beginning college or embarking on their first professional jobs. From that pivotal moment onward, she became the paparazzi's constant focus, a never-ending feast for the tabloid media. Ubiquitous photos depicted her with glazed eyes, stumbling out of nightclubs, her hands stained with cigarettes and alcohol, often mumbling incoherently into her phone. She entered rehabilitation facilities time and time again, only to relapse, caught in what seemed to be an interminable cycle of addiction and recovery. She entered rehab for the third time in less than 2 years. A desperate series of attempts to escape the insidious demon within. Yet, therapy offered little lasting solace when she consistently returned to an environment teeming with temptation and immense public pressure. Self-destruction had tragically become a deeply ingrained habit, a self-defeating coping mechanism for the profound pain and emptiness that gnawed at her from within. Hollywood lifted her high, then hurled her to the bottom. After each successive scandal, Lindsay Lohan would attempt to stage a comeback, striving to return to acting and prove that her talent was still intact. However, Hollywood, a cold, grinding machine, had lost its trust in her. The intoxicating promise of fame had irrevocably transformed into a harsh sentence. In 2010, she was cast in the lead role of the independent film Inferno, a biographical drama about the life of adult film star Linda Lovelace. This was seen as a golden opportunity for a much-needed fresh start, a chance to reclaim her career. But history, tragically, repeated itself. She was fired by the director after consistently failing to show up on time for shoots, and when she did appear, she was often in no condition to work. In a candid interview, the director bluntly admitted, "I can't work with a ticking time bomb." This was, in essence, a death sentence for her career. Lindsay had become a significant liability too great a risk for any film project to undertake. In 2011, she was sentenced to 120 days in jail for violating probation. This was the third time in 4 years she had faced such a consequence. Instead of returning as a celebrated star, Lindsay Lohan became a recurring punchline on late-night talk shows, a prime example of a teen idol's spectacular downfall. Directors consistently turned their backs on her, and critically, insurance companies flatly refused to underwrite any projects involving her, deeming the financial and reputational risk far too high. She had effectively become a debtor to Hollywood, not in monetary terms, but in the overwhelming weight of her accumulated mistakes and a glaring lack of professionalism. People began derisively calling her a Hollywood has-been, someone who once shone brightly as a star, but was now merely a remnant. A painful reminder of what she once possessed and what she had irrevocably lost. The once blinding spotlight had dimmed, faded into an almost imperceptible glow, leaving behind only the desolate shadow of profound failure. Same-sex love, toxic relationships, and the ghost in the mirror. Between her frequent stints in rehabilitation and her numerous court appearances, Lindsay Lohan publicly revealed her relationship with DJ Samantha Ronson. This was a notable and rare instance of a prominent female A-lister publicly coming out as gay at that time, and it instantly became a media sensation, drawing incessant and often intrusive attention. The romance, however, did not last long, and its turbulent nature left Lindsay emotionally vulnerable. She was frequently photographed crying and fleeing parties after their heated arguments, a visible manifestation of the profound instability within her soul. After Samantha Ronson, a string of relationships with wealthy men followed, from enigmatic Arab businessmen to powerful Russian magnates. This period was marred by persistent rumors that Lindsay was paid to party, to simply appear at lavish events, to serve as a glamorous companion for exclusive gatherings. The British newspaper The Independent once posed a blunt, almost cruel question. Is Lindsay selling herself short just to be near the spotlight? The answer, perhaps, lay in her vacant stares, in leaked audio recordings where Lindsay's voice, tinged with despair, whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore." It was the heart-wrenching confession of a lost soul. A person defined not by her own essence but by others' fleeting expectations and her own self-destructive tendencies. She had tragically lost her identity within the labyrinthine depths of Hollywood, becoming a mere shadow of her once vibrant, promising self. Attempting to rise in a world that no longer wanted her to exist. From 2014 to 2020, Lindsay Lohan lived almost in self-imposed exile, primarily residing in Europe and Dubai. This geographical distance provided a much-needed respite from the relentless scrutiny of the American media and the toxic temptations that had once so thoroughly destroyed her. During this period, she made various attempts to rebuild her life and career. She ventured into opening clubs, invested in real estate, and even launched a reality show, Lindsay Lohan's Beach Club, on MTV, which, despite its intentions, ultimately failed. These endeavors, however feeble, clearly indicated that she still craved belonging, that she still harbored a desire to be seen and acknowledged. They were desperate, albeit largely unsuccessful, attempts to regain her footing, but the world, it seemed, had largely turned its back on her. In a rare and remarkably introspective television appearance, Lindsay Lohan spoke with profound honesty, offering a poignant confession about her own personal tragedy. "I'm not an angel. But I'm not a devil either. I'm just someone who got burned too early, by a world that never let me be myself." It was an explanation for her myriad mistakes, an attribution of blame to circumstance, but also, significantly, an acceptance of a part of her difficult destiny. The Lindsay Lohan of today is markedly different. She appears more mature, more private, and has publicly declared herself clean, expressing a genuine desire to become a mother and build a peaceful life far away from the toxic glare of fame. She is now married and has recently welcomed her first child, signaling a definitive shift towards stability and personal fulfillment. Yet, the indelible scars on her career and, more profoundly, on her soul, remain. They serve as a stark and enduring reminder that Hollywood doesn't merely produce dazzling stars, it also, with chilling mercilessness, crushes them. Her story is a painful lesson for anyone who dares to dream too big, to shine too brightly, in its cruel and unforgiving spotlight. Lindsay Lohan's narrative is a cautionary tale. A powerful testament to the exorbitant price of fame, and a stark illustration of the inherent fragility of youth within a colossal, soulless entertainment machine. Elizabeth Taylor, the empress with a crown reeking of opium. She wasn't just addicted to men. She was addicted to the feeling of being loved. Of being craved to the point of poisoning herself to continue existing in that blinding light, a light no one could endure forever. It was a prison, a curse hidden behind perfect beauty. This profound insight encapsulates the tragic duality of Elizabeth Taylor, a woman whose extraordinary beauty and unparalleled talent were inextricably linked to a life of relentless scrutiny, tumultuous relationships, and a hidden struggle with addiction that spanned more than half a century. Her story is a poignant exploration of fame's gilded cage, the human need for connection, and the insidious ways in which external pressures can intertwine with internal vulnerabilities to create a life of both dazzling triumph and profound suffering. Born to be a legend, fated to be defined, Elizabeth Taylor was more than just a star, she was an epic, a living embodiment of Hollywood's intoxicating allure, its immense power, and its inherent tragedies. Born in 1932 in London, England, she swiftly emigrated with her family to the sun-drenched landscapes of California, the burgeoning heart of the film industry. By the tender age of 6, she was already dubbed the most beautiful child in the world, a title that would prove to be both an undeniable glory and an oppressive burden she carried throughout her entire life. Her legendary violet eyes, a rare and captivating beauty, commanded attention from her earliest days, setting her apart even among the dazzling array of child actors. By the age of 12, she had captivated and moved an entire nation to tears with her deeply emotional and masterful performance in the film National Velvet, 1944. This role not only solidified her position as a child prodigy but also cemented her status as a star who possessed such inherent luminescence that she didn't need to mature to truly shine. Hollywood, an insatiable predator perpetually hungry for fresh talent, crowned her far too early, anointing her queen before she could truly grasp the profound meaning of such immense power or the isolating solitude that inevitably accompanied it. Elizabeth Taylor, uniquely among her peers, stood as the last true female icon of Hollywood's golden age, a dazzling legacy tragically fraught with personal turmoil. She was the quintessential blend of classical beauty, an innate and undeniable acting talent, and an intense, unmistakable charisma that transcended the screen, a potent combination that audiences craved with an almost feverish intensity and that the industry exploited to its absolute fullest potential. Yet, beneath the shimmering veneer of that unparalleled fame, meticulously hidden beneath layers of expertly applied thick makeup, draped in opulent gowns, and adorned with glittering diamonds, lay a life perpetually shattered by passionate, often self-destructive love affairs, relentless illnesses that mercilessly tormented her fragile body, an unending cascade of public scandals, and a deeply entrenched addiction that spanned over half a century. This hidden struggle was cleverly concealed beneath prescription pills generously provided by complacent doctors and wineglasses seemingly laced with unspoken tears. It was a dark secret no one in Hollywood truly wished to have exposed, for its revelation would inevitably tarnish the flawless image of the goddess, the impeccably crafted persona of Hollywood's queen. She was, in essence, a magnificent rose, exquisite and alluring, but one that tragically concealed sharp thorns and potent venom from the very world that had so eagerly created her. Loved to destruction. A quest for affection in a maze of fate. Elizabeth Taylor's romantic life was as legendary and dramatic as her film career. She married an astonishing 8 times to 7 different men, an unheard of number that cemented her legendary romantic history, a dramatic card always played whenever she changed husbands. Each marriage was not merely a simple vow exchanged, it was a grand, meticulously staged play, a sweeping love story brimming with an intoxicating blend of passion, raw intensity, and yet, inevitably, turmoil and profound personal tragedy. She pursued love with a desperate, almost obsessive fervor, as if it were the sole antidote capable of filling a deep, unyielding void within her soul. Among these many loves was Mike Todd, the flamboyant film producer, whom she openly declared her only true love. He was a wild and free spirit, much like herself, and his sudden, tragic death in a plane crash left an unhealing scar on Taylor's soul, pushing her into an emotional void that no one seemed capable of filling. Then came Eddie Fisher, ironically Todd's close friend, whom Taylor famously stole from actress Debbie Reynolds in a scandalous affair that utterly rocked Hollywood to its core, earning Taylor the public label of homewrecker, a heavy price she willingly paid for her desperate craving for affection and emotional security. And above all, transcending all other relationships, was Richard Burton, the greatest, most agonizing, and ultimately most ill-fated love of her tumultuous life. She married him twice, divorced him twice, yet never truly left him spiritually. Even after his passing, they were like 2 opposing, yet inextricably drawn, magnets, 2 tempestuous souls seemingly born to destroy each other in a blaze of passion. Their marriage to Burton was widely considered Hollywood's most tempestuous love affair, a relentless whirlwind of intense passion and volatile arguments. They loved each other madly, fought fiercely with unbridled intensity, drank heavily to excess, often threw objects at each other in fits of unbridled rage, publicly cursed each other without a hint of shame, and then, after each explosive encounter, made love wildly as if wanting to devour each other, to melt into one another to escape the harsh realities of their existence. Their love was a kind of drug, it burned both of them from the inside out, as the legendary director Franco Zeffirelli once described with chilling accuracy. It was a drug that required no needle, no inhalation, just an intoxicating gaze, a scorching kiss, and a sweet, deceptive lie about eternal happiness. They were, at their core, 2 lost souls, finding each other amidst a raging storm and then sinking deeper together into the abyss of self-destruction, bound by a shared torment. Burton himself was a heavy alcoholic, a tormented genius perpetually haunted by his own inner demons. He unwittingly, yet inevitably, dragged Elizabeth deeper into a deadly cycle from which neither seemed capable of escaping. Drinking to momentarily forget the profound pain and gnawing loneliness, drinking to love more wildly and without inhibition, to feel intensely alive and desired, and ultimately, drinking simply to exist in the harsh, unforgiving world of relentless fame and immense pressure, where every single misstep was magnified exponentially under the flashing lights of the paparazzi. Their lives together were a relentless, opulent party of self-destruction, cloaked in artificial glamour and the ever-present, judgmental whispers of an insatiably curious public. The pills for the woman who couldn't sleep, secrets beneath a perfect veneer. Elizabeth Taylor's reliance on medication began remarkably early in her career. As early as the 1950s, while still a rapidly rising young star, she started relying on painkillers after suffering a severe back injury during the filming of National Velvet. Initially, her use was purely to alleviate physical pain, a justifiable necessity. However, that physical injury inadvertently paved the way for a deeper emotional wound, serving as an insidious gateway to the world of dependency. Over time, her consumption did not stop at common aspirin. She progressively advanced to stronger substances. From simple sleeping pills to potent tranquilizers like Valium, and later, a highly potent and notoriously addictive Demerol, powerful drugs that were, astonishingly, readily prescribed to a star of her unparalleled caliber without significant oversight. In her poignant yet chillingly accurate memoir, actress Debbie Reynolds, whose husband Taylor famously stole, and who thus witnessed her life firsthand from a unique perspective, wrote a line that resonates with tragic truth: Elizabeth Taylor had a medicine cabinet that a military hospital would envy. It wasn't just an ordinary medicine cabinet, it was, in essence, a personal chemical arsenal she meticulously used to combat not only physical pain but also the profound loneliness, the pervasive fear, and the relentless pressure of a life scrutinized every single second by an insatiable world. Her addiction, unlike that of many rebellious stars of later generations, was not loud, nor did it publicly erupt in dramatic, visible displays. There were no shocking arrests plastered across headlines, no undignified photos of her out of control stumbling through public streets. Elizabeth concealed her struggle with meticulous precision beneath layers of breathtaking glamour and overt extravagance. With the world's most expensive diamonds sparkling around her neck, with luxurious mink furs draped elegantly over her shoulders, and with the faint, mysterious scent of Chanel No. 5 perpetually lingering in her wake. She was a master of concealing the unvarnished truth, a sorceress of self-deception, meticulously crafting an illusion of flawless perfection that captivated millions. But the devastating consequences of her hidden addiction could not be perpetually concealed. She gained weight uncontrollably, once spiraled into a near-fatal coma from an overdose, and was compelled to be hospitalized for detoxification more than 30 times over 2 decades. Each hospitalization was a silent, agonizing confession of the unceasing internal battle she waged, a temporary surrender to the formidable demon of addiction. She constantly sought profound peace, a deep, dreamless sleep that would offer genuine respite, but tragically found it only in the restless slumbers induced by pills, a deceptive and ultimately unsatisfying comfort. The first woman to say, "I'm addicted," a legend's bold move. In 1983, in an act that was nothing short of revolutionary and incredibly courageous for its time, Elizabeth Taylor became the first A-list Hollywood star to publicly enter the Betty Ford Center for Addiction Treatment. At that juncture, such a public admission was unimaginable, almost tantamount to career suicide. No celebrity dared to openly admit to having addiction issues, as it was widely believed that such a confession would utterly destroy their carefully constructed image of perfection and lead to an irreversible loss of public admiration. Yet, Elizabeth Taylor did it, before the watchful press, before the flashing cameras, and before those who had once considered her an untouchable goddess. She boldly broke a pervasive wall of silence that Hollywood had meticulously erected for decades to protect its darkest, most uncomfortable secrets. She shared her truth with heart-wrenching honesty, a confession no longer hidden, no longer a carefully staged performance. Her words echoed with raw vulnerability: "I'm not here because I'm a star. I'm here because I'm a human being who is dying." It wasn't merely a desperate cry for help from a trapped soul, it was a powerful declaration of vulnerability, yet also an act of immense strength. A profound act of freeing herself from the suffocating shackles of false perfection. Taylor's first battle with addiction at Betty Ford lasted an arduous 100 days. A long and painful period of physical agony and intense internal struggle. Then came the second time, the third time, and a heartbreaking string of silent relapses. Solitary battles known only to her and her persistent, tormenting cravings. She candidly admitted that she couldn't live a single day without Valium, without sleeping pills, or without clear liquor. At this point, her struggle was no longer about entertainment, no longer about endless, glamorous parties. It was purely about survival, a weary existence caught in a perpetual, debilitating haze. She fought not for fame, not for her audience, but for her very life, for the chance to breathe freely and genuinely. Saintess or addict with a crown, the mystery of a soul. The biggest, most haunting question has always lingered in the air: Echoing through the annals of Hollywood history, what was Elizabeth Taylor truly addicted to? Was it just drugs in the literal sense? Or alcohol? Or men, the constant need for a partner? Or was it the intoxicating allure of fame itself, the blinding spotlight that perpetually illuminated her every move? Or perhaps, most insidiously, it was self-loathing, a toxic emotion far more damaging and corrosive than any substance? Perhaps, in the tragic complexity of her being, she was addicted to all of it, a complex and terrifying cocktail of unfulfilled desires, deep unhealed wounds, and the relentless, suffocating pressure from the world that constantly demanded her perfection. Behind the thick layers of impeccable makeup, the opulent haute couture gowns, and the shimmering brilliance of the world's most expensive diamonds glittering around her neck, lay a woman who often felt profoundly empty and utterly alone. She relentlessly sought love, attention, and external validation from others as if they were a life raft in a turbulent sea, but they were all just temporary pain relievers, never truly able to fill the deep, aching void in her soul. In the rare diaries released after her death, offering haunting, intimate glimpses into her inner world, there's a poignant entry from 1968, brimming with an almost unbearable despair. "I just want to sleep forever. No dreams. No waking up. I'm so tired." That was the heartbreaking cry of an exhausted soul, yearning desperately to escape the crushing burden of life. To escape the brilliant but ultimately burning spotlight, to escape the demanding role she was forced to play for an entire lifetime. Taylor was a passionate lover, an undeniable beauty icon, a victim of her own life's extraordinary circumstances, and simultaneously, a subtle perpetrator in her own tragic story. For she chose to cope with her profound pain through the destructive path of self-annihilation. She lived her life like the most exquisite flower in a poisonous garden, and tragically, she never left it, because it was the only world she truly knew, the only place where she was unequivocally recognized and loved. Even if the ultimate price was her own peace of mind and lasting serenity. The legacy of a survivor, an eternal warning. Elizabeth Taylor passed away in 2011, at the venerable age of 79. In the end, she did not succumb directly to drugs, nor from alcohol, but from chronic heart failure. Yet, everyone who truly understood her life knew that her heart had been metaphorically, and perhaps literally, constricted for decades by profound loneliness, by the relentless grip of chronic addiction, and by the sheer weight of a life that everyone envied from afar but no one, in truth, truly wished to live. Her life stands as a harsh and enduring cautionary tale about the exorbitant price of fame, about the inherent fragility of a soul placed under an intense spotlight far too early and for an overwhelmingly long duration. She left behind not just a vast and indelible cinematic legacy replete with iconic roles that continue to captivate audiences, but also a mythical symbol of profound vulnerability. A woman who courageously battled her own formidable demons and, against all odds, survived to tell the tale. Taylor, unlike many others, did not hide her weaknesses. She was not afraid to openly expose the deep scars that life had left on her. Instead, she courageously transformed them into a powerful weapon, both to save herself from the suffocating shadows of shame and to, perhaps unwittingly, save those who came after her. Other potential victims of the relentless, unforgiving Hollywood machine. Her story is a testament to the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. Even when faced with the greatest challenges and the most formidable, seductive temptations that fame can offer, ghosts still linger on the lot. Some say Hollywood is the American dream gilded in gold, an illusory paradise where anything is possible. It's where girls with angelic faces can transform into goddesses after just one film, one fated role. It's a world promising dazzling fame, endless wealth, and an eternal kind of love from millions of hearts. But behind the glaring oversized posters, behind the brilliant camera flashes and the lavish gowns on the red carpet. There always exists a door no one wants to open, a door leading down to a deep basement, where drugs, alcohol, and mental scars hide like nocturnal bats, waiting to swallow lost souls. It's the dark side of the glittering coin, an open secret no one dares to touch, a heartbreaking truth veiled by ostentatious glamour. The stories of these individuals are more than mere raw confessions, they are whispers from the abyss. From souls who once touched the dizzying heights of fame and then plummeted into the chasm of self-destruction. Each bore a unique pain, each sought a different escape. Demi Moore once said, her voice mournful like an echo from a dark alley, "I wasn't addicted to drugs. I was addicted to escape." It's a haunting admission about seeking an exit from a harsh reality, from herself. From the relentless pressure of perfection that Hollywood demanded. She wasn't seeking pleasure, she was seeking oblivion, a moment's release from the burden of her own being. Melanie Griffith, meanwhile, confessed with a chilling candor, "I don't know who I am without a drink beside me." It's an admission of dependence on alcohol as an extension of herself. A fragile shield for inner fear and insecurity. Alcohol wasn't just a beverage, it was the definition of her existence, a mirror reflecting a shattered self. Courtney Love, with a defiant sneer. A careless demeanor when questioned about heroin, the drug that defined a generation of musicians and artists, who wouldn't want to feel invincible? A bitterly ironic justification for seeking illusory power, a delusion of absolute strength and invulnerability in a world rife with weakness and fragility. It was a rebellion against reality. An attempt to transcend pain. Lindsay Lohan once wrote in her private diary, lines steeped in the despair and confusion of a tender soul, "I'm not messed up. I just don't know how to be good." It was a cry for help from a young spirit, burned too early by the spotlight, a sorrowful explanation for the mistakes that plunged her into the depths. She didn't intend to cause harm. But she was lost in a labyrinth of wrong choices. And Elizabeth Taylor simply remained silent, her legendary violet eyes holding an ocean of secrets no one could fathom. She lived as a legend and died with secrets no one was brave enough to decipher, untold stories of endless nights, unspoken pains, and solitary battles with the demons within her. She was a symbol of glamour and simultaneously a living testament to its destructive power, an unsolved riddle about the price of perfection. Victims or lost souls in the labyrinth? But were they truly victims of the ruthless Hollywood machine, lambs driven into the furnace of fame with no power of choice? Or were they merely souls who chose to wander astray in the labyrinth of celebrity and indulgence, willingly plunging into the whirlpool of self-destruction as a way to feel alive? Was it that? For some, self-destruction was the only way to feel existence, to experience something more intense than the pervasive emptiness and loneliness? This is the greatest question to which no one can provide an absolute answer, for the line between victim and self-destructor is often blurry, almost indistinguishable in that glamorous world. In the realm of these stars, addiction was not merely a pursuit of physical pleasure, it was a natural reaction, almost a defense mechanism, against an unnatural life. Hollywood nurtured these stars with incessant praise, multi-million-dollar contracts, and an almost divine adoration. But in return, it demanded an incredibly steep price, privacy, inner peace, and sometimes even their very selves. When the spotlight faded, when the cameras stopped rolling, when the applause died down, they faced an enormous void, a terrifying silence. And in that void, the demons began to whisper, the deep-seated fears began to surface. Drugs and alcohol became their only companions, false comforters offering momentary peace. A sense of control in lives completely out of their grasp. Each dose, each drink, wasn't just a temporary dopamine hit, it was an attempt to silence the noise in their minds. To soothe the fear of being forgotten, the obsession with no longer being good enough, beautiful enough, talented enough to survive in this game. They were trapped in a gilded cage. Admired and craved by millions, yet unable to find a real connection, an unconditional love, a genuine embrace. Fame became a burden, a sentence rather than a gift, an invisible chain binding them. Echoes from the past and a warning for the present. Hollywood never sleeps. Today, the stage lights still shine, dreams are still woven, and new stars are born every day. But if you listen closely at night, when the film lot is empty, when the clamor of the crowd has subsided, you might hear the clinking of ice in a whiskey glass, the flick of a lighter igniting a final cigarette, or the whisper of a forgotten name, a name that once shone brightly before vanishing into the shadows. Those are the echoes of the past. The murmurs from lost souls. Not everyone survived to tell their story, to overcome addiction and rediscover themselves. But ghosts don't need to live. They just need to be remembered. To serve as silent warnings for those stepping onto the path of fame. They are reminders of the price to pay, of the abysses waiting beneath the sparkling facade. And perhaps, somewhere in an abandoned trailer, under a silver moon veiled by the dust of time, Elizabeth Taylor is still smiling, a smile harboring 1,000 years of pain. Lindsay Lohan is still crying tears of regret for a stolen childhood. Demi Moore is still hiding, searching for a place no one can find her. They are the eternal ghosts of Hollywood, stories that never end. The question is, do you have the courage to step into that place, to face the raw truth behind the glamour? Do you have the courage to look directly at the tragedies, the pain, and the addictions that shape these individuals, and ask yourself what you would become in that labyrinth?